Hi, thank you so much for tuning in. In today's episode, I'm going to be covering stamp duty. I'm sure you've heard that term before, and it's interchangeable with many other types of duties, also named stamp duty. But in today's episode, I'll be specifically talking about stamp duty relative to property trading or property buying or selling. You're watching Own Land in Kenya. I'm Solomon Wangwe. So what's stamp duty? Stamp duty is basically a tax by the Kenya Revenue Authority on all properties changing hands or ownership within the country. So basically, if you're going to buy land from Goshen Acquisitions or anyone else out there, you are required by law to pay a tax, a percentage tax on the amount of the transaction subject to valuation by the government agency. And basically this is what it means. If, say you're buying land from Goshen Acquisitions for 1 million shillings, by law, for us to transfer that property from Goshen Acquisitions to yourself, you have to pay KRA 2% of the 1 million shillings because it's freehold land or agricultural land. If you're buying land in urban areas and it falls under the lease certificate regime of ownership, then you're required to pay up to 4%. So it's either 2% or 4% depending on whether or not it's freehold agricultural land or urban property. I hope that makes sense. So if you're buying from Goshen Acquisitions, because we like to deal with freehold property, you're going to be required to pay 2% of the 1 million shillings, which basically amounts to 20,000 shillings in stamp duty. You have to pay that and get an official receipt from KRA and attach it to all the other documents relative to that transaction for the Ministry of Lands to then change the name of ownership on that title deed from ourselves to you. I hope that makes sense. So that's what stamp duty is. Simple tax levied by the government of Kenya on the transfer of ownership between parties specifically for property. I'll just point out one other thing about that, because it's easy to assume that this tax is applicable every time there's a transfer. There are cases when you can kind of avoid the stamp duty component of a transaction by changing ownership from yourself personally. For example, if I own a property in my own name as Solomon Wangwe, and I want to create a trust or a special purpose vehicle like a limited company or a limited liability partnership, a licensed attorney can advise you on either one of those vehicles. But the purpose for my doing that is to ensure succession is smooth for my children to inherit the property should I move to heaven before my time. What I would normally do in that particular case is create the entity, a limited company or a limited liability partnership, or you could even make it a trust, and then give ownership of the property that's in my name to that entity, which I am still basically the owner of. If I can prove that I am 100% owner of this new company or partnership or trust, and I'm simply moving ownership from myself personally to this entity's name, then stamp duty would not be required, because the property is still considered or seen to be owned by the same person, right? So the stamp duty only becomes activated when you're changing ownership from one specific party or individual to a completely separate one. So I hope that helps and makes sense to you. If you have any questions about that, feel free to engage us. I highly advise that you also seek the counsel of licensed financial advisors or legal practitioners who specialize in conveyancing, who can explain that in greater detail to you. But we're happy to answer any questions that you might have. Check out our website, www.goshenacquisitions.com, or you can send us a message on Facebook or any number of our social media platforms. You're watching Own Land in Kenya. I'm Solomon Wangwe. Stay tuned for more information on strategic land investment.